Welcome to another week, another show of Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Pleased to be joining you. Thanks for tuning in. Got another good show lined up for you today, as always. And we've got Joe Mershman joining me here in just a moment with the Mershman Minute, and then David Eicholt, the Hawkeye Insider. Special treat for you this week. Jeff Horner's not able to make it again. He's on a recruiting trip for his basketball team at Truman State University. So we'll have Adam Haluska and Greg Bruner, two former great Hawkeye basketball players. Greg Bruner joined me last week in place of Jeff. Now I've got Adam and Greg together. So looking forward to that. All that being said, I'm very pleased to bring up Joe Mershman. You see, Joe is joining us from Florida, sunny Florida. Joe, how's everything going with you, my friend?
It's very nice down here, but unfortunately, I got one more day left and back to the salt mine.
Well, away it goes indeed. Well, Joe, we're hearing rumors, as the viewers know, we record this on Tuesday afternoons. We're still up in the air with the Michigan-Iowa game. So for this conversation, let's presume it's still going to be happening. Give me your thoughts, if you would, about your life, your world, how it intersects with the Hawkeyes and Michigan Wolverines this week. Let's hear it, Joe.
Well, no question about it. Orders are coming in for next spring. And, the Michigan game, I was lucky enough to be at the game that Harbaugh lost the game on a field goal. And I was also there for the game that we all ran out on the field. So I don't think this one's going to be quite as exciting. I think the Hawkeyes are going to outclass them and win this one quite easily.
I'm going to have to agree with you on that. And then next week, you and I will talk about the bowl possibilities for the Iowa Hawkeyes. So, Joe, enjoy Florida for another day and then safe travels. Look forward to seeing you back here later on this week, my friend.
Thanks, Dave.
You bet. Thank you. And I've located David Eicholt, HawkeyeInsider.com. Point of clarification, viewers, because of this television show we recorded on Tuesday afternoons, we recorded out of sequence once in a while. So I recorded with James Vandenberg before David. And so we were talking about, so the next segment, you're going to see James and I talking about if the Iowa game, Michigan game is canceled. Well, on great authority here from David Eicholt, Hawkeye Insider, it has been officially canceled. So David, first and foremost, as always, thanks for joining me. And secondly, I didn't want to be the bearer of bad news, but I thought I'd take that elephant off your back, and I'll mention it first. Fill in the blanks for us, please, my friend.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting development here, Dave, and I definitely have some opinions on this topic, but Michigan on Sunday and Monday did practice. Jim Harbaugh, the Michigan head coach, did seem more optimistic than the previous 2 weeks that this game would be played. But then the report came out that more than 50 players were out of Sunday's practice due to contact tracing for COVID-19. So they had fewer than 40 players practice. So it's frankly ridiculous that they're just canceling the game on Tuesday, because this basically limited Iowa to not want to schedule a game for Saturday. Yeah, we saw Coastal Carolina, BYU pulled off in 2 days, but we know Kirk Ferentz, he wants a full week of preparation. But if the Big Ten had known that they only had about 40 players practicing on Sunday, I think they would have pulled the plug on the game immediately. And who knows, maybe Iowa and Georgia could have been playing this weekend. So granted, I don't think it's the Big Ten's fault completely, but this just basically sums up the entire season in a nutshell, Dave.
It really does. And David, and talking to James Vandenberg, again, recording this out of sequence for the segment, the next segment you're going to see James and I talk about the possibility of the game being postponed. As recently as 5 minutes ago, I recorded with Joe Mershman. It hadn't been official. And then you broke the news. And so as we talk about this on Tuesday afternoon, we go into tonight's CFP, the college football playoff rankings. Whether the Hawks were going to play Michigan or not, I'm not surprised by the way the game was postponed. As you mentioned, I've got some feelings on this too with the Big Ten, Michigan. I'll just say I'm not surprised and I'll leave it at that. But you and I will talk more about, tune into the radio show that you'll hear this weekend on WMT and KXIC out of Iowa City, Fox Sports Radio, KXIC, and then WMT statewide, 600 AM. David and I will get more in depth as to our feelings, as we both have just said about the Big Ten and Iowa Hawkeyes and Michigan game being canceled. So, David, let's do this. Where do you see the Hawks going in the rankings this week in the CFP? I know I was joking with you off camera. You kind of missed it last week when you were shocked that the Hawks got in the top 20, but they're number 16. That was 2 weeks ago. Now they're number 16. Where do you see them advancing after the Wisconsin victory last week, 28-7, convincing Hawkeye victory at Kinnick last week? Where do you see the Hawks moving up tonight in the CFP on Tuesday night?
Yeah, I can at least see them moving up to number 14, Dave. I think Iowa's defense put together their best effort of the season. I don't blame that touchdown that was given up on them, because it was just a really weird sort of play, almost brought back the special teams nightmares that Iowa has it's coming to fruition the last couple of times Iowa, Wisconsin have played. I think they can move up to 14 or 13. But again, it's a big what if factor, Dave. If Iowa could have maybe played against Indiana, I know Indiana, Purdue had been canceled. I know, Georgia, Iowa are not playing. But one of those wins, maybe that boosts Iowa up, in the top 12, maybe. And then they would have been able to have a New Year's Six bowl. But as Kirk Ferentz said shortly after the game was canceled, he's not really thinking about it. It's sort of a wash season anyway. They're just more focused on Iowa football and developing the future talent. And again, they've won 6 straight games. They've made the most out of this year. But I think 13 or 14, and they'll be pretty happy with where they're at.
Yeah, it's interesting. You and I have talked about this in the past on the air and off the air. Iowa would have been one of a handful of teams to have played all of their scheduled games had this Michigan game come off. All the fans who wanted the Iowa-Indiana game, they wanted to reignite the rivalry with Purdue and Indiana, but that game is postponed, as you mentioned. So all these things we had visions of grandeur didn't come out anyway. But I will ask you this directly, and then we'll move on to basketball with the Iowa-Gonzaga game coming up by the men's game this Saturday, number 1 against the number 3 ranked Hawkeyes. First team, all Big Ten offense. We got a couple 3 guys to mention. Again, we record this on Tuesday, so the defensive awards will be awarded tomorrow on Wednesday, special teams on Thursday. So we're only going to talk offense today. But David, before we get to that, let's talk about the bowl projection. Where do you see the Hawks going if Iowa State loses to Oklahoma or if they beat Oklahoma? As you're laughing, I got to go there since we don't have an Iowa-Michigan game or the Iowa-Indiana game. All these things we wanted. Is this going to be a Christmas, New Year's present for us where we get an Iowa State game in a New Year's Six bowl, potentially? Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's about a 50-50 reaction on who you ask among Iowa fans. They want to play Iowa State. But let's put it this way. How about Iowa going back to the Outback Bowl? Because I think that's going to become a reality. The old contract ran out, so Iowa is allowed to go back to the Outback Bowl. And with all the stuff going on this year, it wouldn't surprise me if they would have scrapped that anyway. But as far as Iowa State and Iowa goes, I think Oklahoma would have to beat Iowa State convincing for Iowa State to really drop off the rankings. But it's 2020, Dave. I'm not throwing anything off the table at this point. I think Auburn and Iowa or Kentucky and Iowa could be a potential matchup as well.
Mark Stoops, former Hawkeye player, could with Kentucky. That'd be a fun game. So Outback Bowl potentially, and it will be interested to see where they go. And you and I will find that out on Sunday, and we'll talk about it on next week's show to find out where the Hawks are going to go bowling. Hopefully a bigger bowl as we talked about. But we'll see. Outback Bowl, you're saying potentially, and we'll talk about that next week.
Maybe the Citrus Bowl as well, Dave.
There you go. So either Florida or Arizona. We're fine with that either way. Let's do this. Let's have you mention a little bit about Tyler Goodson, Alaric Jackson, and Tyler Linderbaum being first team All Big Ten offense. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think all 3 guys incredibly well-deserving. Tyler Goodson, 762 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns. Had the longest run of any Big Ten player this year with the 80-yard scamper he had against Wisconsin. 3rd most touchdowns, well-deserved. It sets him up for a big breakout year next year. And by the way, really quick, Dave, I don't want to hear the coaches ever take a dig at media, the all-media team, because the Big Ten coaches put Tyler Linderbaum as all second-team Big Ten. He's the nation's best center. So I don't want to hear any more digs about coaches and how bad the media are at projecting the top players in the conference. He's a shoo-in. I think he's a first-team All-American as well.
And then Alaric Jackson, congrats to him as well. David, in about 2 minutes, I wanted to spend more time, but I'm going to be talking about this more in the closing segment with Jeff Horner won't join us this week, but 2 other former Hawkeye greats, his teammates, Greg Bruner and Adam Haluska, will join us. I'll let you preview the Iowa-Gonzaga game, number 1 against number 3. Let's close out this segment with that. Give me a minute and a half, 2 minutes on that, please.
Yeah, Gonzaga. First of all, Jalen Suggs, who had an injury scare back on December 2nd, he's fully healthy. So Iowa is getting Gonzaga at full strength. Number 2 offense in the country, according to Ken Palm. Iowa, number 1. If you like points and you like offense and you like tempo, this is the perfect game because whatever the over is, it's not high enough. Pound that over. There are going to be points all across the board. Gonzaga cannot guard the three-point line. Iowa excels from the perimeter, but Gonzaga specializes in driving in, getting to the paint, and drawing fouls. So Jack Nunge is probably going to be the biggest X factor. Maybe a guy like C.J. Frederick can step up on the defensive end. They're going to need Luka Garza to put up 30 or more points, and they're going to have to find a way to stop the unstoppable. But expect a lot of points, and we'll see how Iowa stacks up with the national title favorites in Gonzaga.
It should be some fun to see how Garza and Nunge face off against Kispert and Timmy, the 2 big guys for Gonzaga. And congrats to the Hawkeyes for beating Iowa State. We can't brushstroke over that. The Hawkeyes last week manhandle, as we talked about. You predicted correctly, so I'm going to get back to your correct predictions, by the way. You said Iowa over North Carolina and Iowa State by double digits. They did that handily, and then, of course, they made short work of Northern Illinois on Sunday, so onward and upward. Saturday, some days off. Saturday, Gonzaga, and tomorrow, as you see the show on Friday night, Gonzaga and Iowa, number 1 and number 3. David, great stuff from you as always. Look forward to catching up with you next week, my friend.
Hey, thanks, Dave. Take care.
You're very welcome, and thank you. That's David Eicholt, HawkeyeInsider.com. Back with more to close out the show. We got James Vandenberg, and then after that, former Hawkeye quarterback James Vandenberg, and then we'll close out the show with Adam Haluska and Greg Bruner. Back with more Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara, in a few moments.
One word means more to farmers than any other: yield. Nobody knows this better than your friend in the field, Mershman Seeds. With industry-leading seed treatments like Tripidity ST, you'll see faster emergence and more bushels per acre. Become a part of the Mershman family and see the difference in your field. Ask your dealer for superiority. Mershman Seeds.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara, and thanks again to James Vandenberg for joining us. As you see him on the screen, James, a former University of Iowa Hawkeye quarterback. So much to say about what's happening with the Iowa Hawkeyes, especially after last week's big victory over Wisconsin, 28-7 at Kinnick Stadium. So, James, a couple of things off the top. Your predictions, spot on as always. Secondly, thanks for joining us. And most importantly, how's everything going with you, my friend?
Good my way. It's fun coming off a win against the Badgers.
Yeah, amen to that. So let's get right to it. Rumor has it, we still haven't been confirmed. As you know, listeners and viewers, we record this show every Tuesday afternoon, midday. So we're still not confirming rumors yet that the Iowa-Michigan game has been canceled or postponed, whatever you want to call it. Right now, the Hawks are on a heater. What a day if that does happen, James. 6 in a row after the first 2 losses that opened the season. Going to go in the top 15 rankings probably tonight when the CFP rankings come out on ESPN. Again, later tonight when we record this on Tuesday. Give me some of your takeaways. Talk about the game Spencer Petras had. Stretching the field a little bit, it looks like. Of course, as you always mentioned, the defense, running game, your best friend as an Iowa quarterback. Looked like he and Brian Ferentz got to open some things up. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I thought it was once again an all-around team win. I mean, you held Wisconsin to 7 points. They really felt like they never crossed the 50-yard line. Our offense kept getting the ball back, and although we weren't maybe clicking in the first half, we did get it going there, got Smith-Marset behind the defense a couple of times in the second half. But, I mean, we're a really good team. We're playing better every week. We certainly would want to play this Saturday, but yeah, early indications are we might not get that opportunity. And I'm also just really confused. Why are we not playing Indiana? Yeah. I mean, this is ridiculous. We should be playing Indiana. That seems pretty common sense, but what do I know?
So much has been made, James, about Indiana, Purdue. They got that rivalry game. Of course, we've got Ohio State and Northwestern playing for the championship of the Big Ten, and they amended the rules the Big Ten did because Ohio State only had 5 games going in, and initially they said this summer and early fall that you had to have 6 games. So when you figure that out, let me know, because that doesn't seem to be a definitive answer. But let's talk about this just a little bit more in depth. When you talk about the Big Ten, where this may leave the Hawkeyes with bowl game, and we've talked about this, and we will continue to talk about it. When you take a look at how this season has played out, again, I hate to say this, James, but what might have been. And I know we can't look in repose, but let's talk a little bit about some of the Big Ten honors that the Hawkeyes got. Again, Tyler Goodson, first team All-Big Ten, that came out. Congratulations to him, his offensive lineman, and Tyler Linderbaum and Alaric Jackson. I mean, many more we're going to mention on the defensive side, and we just discussed with David Eicholt. I don't want to go through the whole list, but many honors to go around. This team very deserving, and like you said with this Michigan game, if it gets held up, what might have been. I can't help but say that, James.
Yeah, no, here's what I know is they're not saying that in the locker room. I mean, they're taking the news as it comes. There's a lot of this stuff that's out of our control, and we knew that coming into July, August, seasons on, seasons off. So unfortunately, yeah, it doesn't look like we're going to get to maybe play this weekend or have a full schedule, but I think we just can't say enough about the job our program has done kind of through all of this. I mean, I think this really has shown across the spectrum of college football what kind of programs are out there and dealing with all these unknowns and adversity. And hats off to the Ohio States, the Alabamas, the Northwesterns, the Iowas that have clearly handled all these bumps very well. But there's certainly been some teams on the other side of the ledger that you can tell that things haven't been perfect, and that's caused them to maybe not play to their full potential. So we're going to take what we can get. I mean, we won 6 of the 8 games. They let us play. If they let us play a 9th, I got a feeling we'd win that one too. But we'll see what they throw our way. Who knows what's going to happen with the bowl games here as cases seem to be rising, and it seems to be affecting a lot of sports right now.
Yeah, you mentioned the key thing there, James, is that Iowa would have been one of a handful of teams in the country that would have played all 9 of their scheduled games, or 10, or whatever the schedule was going to dictate. They would have been one of the very few. Again, we're going with the supposition that still we don't know for sure if the Iowa-Michigan game has been canceled yet, because again, viewers, we record this on Tuesday afternoon. The supposition is that it will be postponed. But let me ask you this, James, before we get into your memories of a Michigan game from your past and talk about maybe what's on the landscape. We'll know on Sunday where the Hawks may go for a bowl game and what the final rankings are going to be and that type of thing for the CFP. I got to ask you this directly. Do you think everybody's talking about if Iowa State loses or wins against Oklahoma, the Hawks and the Cyclones would finally get that matchup, interstate matchup this year that they didn't have earlier in a bowl game, New Year's 6? What are your thoughts on that?
I hope. I wish they could orchestrate it somehow. I mean, we always play them at the beginning of the year, so we never really know who each team's going to be because we play in week 2 or 3. So to get to play them after 9 or 10 games apiece, and with clearly both of us having very solid programs, I think that would be an absolute blast.
Amen.
I mean, I've heard rumors of somehow we could both end up at the Fiesta Bowl, and I don't know. I have no idea. But it would be great if that did happen.
You do great predictions now. You and I have both said Iowa would beat Michigan if there is a game. As we said when we record this, it's still up in the air. But let me ask you this. If you take a look at a couple of your games or your career at Iowa, give us some positive takeaways that you have, or negative, whatever you want, whichever direction you want to go. In your past, if we presume this Iowa-Michigan game comes off, or if it doesn't, what are your remembrances of Iowa games past against Michigan?
Yeah, I mean, they're a big-time program, so every time you play them, they have your attention. We were able to beat them at home my junior year. I think we stopped Denard Robinson 2 or 3 times inside the 6 on 4th down. They handed us a fat loss my senior year up there, but just a great program and fun to play against.
Yeah, as always, you bring out your best against the best. So thank you for your recollections and remembrances of your careers past, or your career games in past, James. But let's do this. Let's say maybe we pause, but we'll have you at least for one more week to see how this shakes out and talk about a potential bowl game matchup, maybe against Iowa State, as you and I are hoping for, and the rest of the fans in the state of Iowa. But we'll catch up with you next week, and we'll look forward to hopefully talking about a Hawkeye victory, or at least where we're going for the postseason. James, thanks so much, my friend.
Sounds good, Dave. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure as always. He is James Vandenberg, former Iowa Hawkeye quarterback. This is Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. We'll be back to close out the show with 2 former Hawkeye basketball playing greats. No Jeff Horner this week, but we will have Greg Bruner and Adam Haluska together. So back with more in just a few moments.
Farming makes a positive difference in my life. I love to take care of the yards and the flowers in the garden, but I also like the opportunity that I have now that I can get in the combine and help when they need that. During the fall, one of the main things that I take care of is hauling grain to the elevator or hauling it here onto the farm and getting it in the bins. Women in general just have more opportunities that they can show their strengths today on the farm.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. And as you can see, I've got double trouble or double protection this week. Jeff Horner was not able to join us. He is out on a recruiting trail. I so badly wanted to, for you viewers, to show you Adam and Greg and Jeff together, but I've got 2 of the 3. On the bottom of the screen, you'll see Greg Bruner, and then up to the upper, my left, you'll see Adam Haluska. So first and foremost, guys, thanks so much for joining me. And secondly, how's everything going with you 2?
It's going good. Thanks, Dave, for having us on. Always good to see you guys. Good to see Greg in person on Zoom here. So doing well. I've got a family, 4 kids, living in the Solon, Iowa City area. And just, once again, anxious for this Hawkeye season.
Amen to that. Greg, how's everything with you, my friend?
Oh, it's good. Appreciate it. Likewise for Adam. I haven't seen him for a while. So it's just nice to see that bearded face a little bit. So he keeps looking younger and I keep looking older. I haven't decided what's going on here. It's like Benjamin Button. He seems to be getting younger. I don't get it. So
I told you, Greg, I saw him last year down in Kirksville. We were at one of Jeff Horner's games, and he looks like he could still put on that number 1 jersey, as you mentioned to me last week. So, Greg, as you know, viewers, Greg joined me last week in place of Jeff, and Greg's Twitter handle is @Bruner44. The digit 4 is number from his playing days. Adam, if you would you update the viewers what you're up to these days? You mentioned your kids, but where you're working, and shout out your Twitter handle, if you would, for the viewers, please, for us.
You might have to shut out my Twitter handle. I don't know if I've got it memorized offhand here, but I work for Wells Fargo Advisors, financial advisor. Been doing that for a number of years here back in the Coralville, Iowa City area. So
Haluska Adam 1, the digit 1 is number from his playing days. Glad I could help you, Adam. So here we go.
There you go.
So first and foremost, guys, just to confirm, in the previous segment with James Vandenberg, we had talked about the Michigan-Iowa football game potentially being canceled. Well, we recorded the first segment out of order, and we confirmed it. The Iowa-Michigan game now canceled. So with you two as former Hawkeye greats, Greg, the all-time leading rebounder, Adam, you were a second-round pick back in the 07 draft, so you played with the same years as Adam or Greg and Jeff, and you were a year behind them after transferring from Iowa State. So we're hoping this Gonzaga-Iowa game comes off without a hitch tomorrow on Saturday. But I got to ask you both as players. Gonzaga's coming off this long break because they had an outbreak or they had to quarantine, and they haven't played games in a while. How would you two handle this as players? Adam and I talked about this a little off the air, and you and I kind of brushstroked at Greg. But Adam, you first. How would you handle this as a player if you were playing for the Hawkeyes right now, the pandemic?
Yeah, I think you take it one game at a time. I think you take care of business of what you can do, right? These guys are kind of in their own little bubble. I think you got to stay safe, healthy, and take it one game at a time. And I know these guys are doing that, but then anticipation, they played with each other all year. I mean, they're excited for every opportunity to play against another opponent, especially this one. You know, we've got a target on our back, but, you know, that's a chance to beat a number 1 team on a neutral floor. I think these guys are ready, and you got to come in with the anticipation that day is going to happen. You're going to play on Saturday, and if it doesn't, then you move on to the next one, and just know that you've got a full schedule ahead of you. But you just got to take it one game at a time, one day at a time.
And Greg?
Yeah, I hope and pray that they play, because I had a really, really good Saturday all planned out, and half of that day is now gone. So for me, you know, one of the disadvantages is you don't know how they're going to react. Coming out of a team that, like Gonzaga, that probably haven't practiced much, haven't played in a while. Are they going to come out with high energy? Are they going to come out with, you know, shooting lights out? Or are they going to come out just low and just a little bit rusty? You really don't know how they're going to play. I mean, they're great basketball players, so you anticipate they're going to come out a little bit more with fire, you know, especially you're playing the number 3 team in the nation on top of it too. So Iowa's best strategy is just to focus in on what they do well. Try not to do anything that is associated with Gonzaga and focus internal, and really key off of those drivers, you know, start inside out, get those shots up, try to get somebody in foul trouble, try to get somebody just going, get a little bit of a momentum gain. And just being able to play on a continuous basis, they're going to have a little bit more of that charge. They're going to have a little bit more of that wind behind them too. So hopefully in the long run, the Hawks will be able to anticipate and be able to outlast them just because of playing a little longer.
Well, I was just going to add to Greg. I mean, I keep hearing around town here, just being in the Iowa City area, you know, how are we going to defend Gonzaga? What are we going to do? I think they got to be looking at our game tape saying, how are we going to stop Iowa, right? That inside-outside game that Greg's talking about with Luka Garza and just the way our guards have shot it, what our bench has been able to bring to the, you know, these other games. I mean, I think you got to be worried about what we can do and the different ways that we can score. So as much as we got to anticipate them, I think they've got to really be looking at us and saying, how do we stop, you know, 5, 6, 7 guys on that squad.
Well stated. And Greg and I kind of brushstroked that last week. And since you and I have talked, Greg, we record on Tuesdays and it airs on Friday nights. But I got to ask you both separately again, when you take a look at what Iowa did last week, and they beat North Carolina by double digits, and then they beat Iowa State handily by double digits, and of course they took care of business and big-time double digits over Northern Illinois. So I would ask you then to follow up on that, Greg, especially inside if you're Luka Garza, since Adam just made that statement about Gonzaga being concerned about Iowa. If you're Luka Garza and Jack Nunge, you were an inside player at 6'7". These guys are 6'11", almost 7 foot, 6'10", 6'11". They're going to have a nice battle with Kispert and with Drew Timme for Gonzaga. How do you take a look at that, Greg, from the post position or from the power forward position?
You know, last week was really 2 unique games. I thought the difference between Luka last year compared to this year was that maturity right there. Played against UNC. We came out shooting lights out. He was out of rhythm the entire game. He was chasing the basketball. He's what Luka does so well, and it's just not taught anymore. And it's one of the best ways to keep production as a post player is you anticipate plays, right? You don't fight for position until you're 1 to 2 passes and you know it's going to get to a spot, and then you see him holding up ground, gaining that momentum, getting in angles, quick, easy baskets. When you shoot it that well, I've gone through games where I remember Halaska and Horner, those guys just shooting lights up. You're chasing the basketball. The ball's never moving into a spot where it's advantageous for you. And that's hard to do. So he got out of rhythm on that. And then Iowa State, he picks up 2 quick fouls, comes back in and does what he does in the second half. That's something that's just different than what has happened in the past. And that's where they're going to be extremely successful. I talked to you about how I would attack Iowa if I'm playing against them. I would try to get Luka in a foul trouble. But if he can score 21 straight, that's hard to do because he's a burst player. He doesn't need a lot of time to score. And that's going to be an interesting factor for him to play. For me, I don't think that there's anything that they need to do different. I think that they associate, they play they try to get to those angles. They score on those quick angles. They get the ball into the right rhythm. That's all they really need to focus in on. And then it's going to open up those guard shots. And if they can do that, they're going to be fine.
Well stated, Greg and Adam both, and when you take a look about how to attack Iowa, how to attack Gonzaga. So again, viewers, if you're just tuning in, it's Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara, and I've got Adam Haluska joining me, former Hawkeye great, Greg Bruner, former Hawkeye great, former teammates of Jeff Horner, who's not able to join us this week. He's on the road recruiting for his Truman State Bulldogs basketball team. But Adam, again, a former second-round pick from the Iowa Hawkeyes in the NBA draft in 2007. Greg, Iowa's all-time leading rebounder and a very successful career overseas. So in the last minute and a half or so, guys, left with you. Adam, I'll start with you and then let you close out. Greg, Adam, where does Iowa go from here? And I know we'll talk to you each week, and stay tuned, viewers, as you'll see on my website, DaveO'HaraSports.com. Adam and Greg joined me on last week's radio show on WMT and KXIC in Iowa City and WMT in Cedar Rapids area. But Adam will be joining me this week. We'll go in more in depth. But Adam, how do you see the rest of this short little time frame go for Iowa after Gonzaga? Then boom, they get right into the Big Ten season, 3 games before the end of the year, into the new year.
Yeah, it's different than when we played, right? Big Ten is starting before Christmas. So I think these guys, they're going to be ready to go. Once again, you take it 1 game at a time, like I said earlier, get this big win on Saturday, and then you start looking at Big Ten play. And I know these guys, we had it marked down. There hasn't been an Iowa team win the Big Ten outright in, it's been, 30 plus years.
Yeah.
So that's definitely one thing I know that these guys have circled is, wrap up the season, get a Big Ten outright championship.
And Greg, you in about 15 seconds, please.
Yeah, adversity is going to hit at some point. Learning to deal with it, manage it. Adam's right, 1 game at a time. Something bad happens, you got to let it go, focus on the next one.
Well stated by you two. He's Adam Haluska, Greg Bruner, former Hawkeye basketball playing greats. This is Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Stay tuned for the end of the show when the credits roll, and support my advertisers as they support this show. Thanks to Adam Haluska, Greg Bruner, and David Eichholt, as well as James Vandenberg and Joe Mershman. Thanks to you, the viewers. Adam, Greg, thanks so much. We'll catch up with you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. That's all from me. Thanks to all of you.